trying to get.
Welcome. I'm so glad that you are here. I'm Connie Ryan. I'm the Executive Director of Interfaith Alliance of Iowa, and we are one of the sponsoring organizations of Moral Mondays Iowa, along with the whole list of folks that are on the flyer that you hopefully picked up at the end of the table. If you didn't sign in, we would love for you to do that. We do keep track of how many people we have here and add your name if you're new to our email list. So hopefully you will sign in at the end if you haven't done so already. I'm excited to have with us Representative Beth Wessel-Christel from Ames and Jamie Birch-Elliott from Planned Parenthood, and we're going to talk about women's reproductive rights and the attacks that we have been experiencing from the legislature, not only this year, but the last couple of years. So I'm going to turn it over to Representative Wessel-Christel.
Thank you, Connie, and thank you for being here today. This is an important issue that we keep addressing every single year. I was here, I've been working on this issue. I've decided since 2011, where we have been fighting against attacks on women's reproductive health care ever since. Unfortunately, the other side has had some successes. From 2011 through 2015, the Senate was in Democratic control, and anything that was passed here was mostly killed over in the Senate, with just a few exceptions. We know that 70% of Americans favor or want safe and legal abortions. But last year, in 2017, we passed what is called the 20-week ban. It started off in our committee as what is proposed this year, an extreme 6-week ban, which the other side calls a heartbeat bill. We made them a little embarrassed by that bill. It had some provisions in there that said parents and husbands would be making decisions for for the women in their lives, whether they were adult or not, and it was just absolutely ridiculous. So the 20-week ban passed. If you use medical terminology and the staging of pregnancy as medical scientists do and OBGYNs do, it's actually a 22-week ban. I don't know why they used their terminology. I kept asking them, and they said because that's how the language came to them. So I don't really understand. So it's really a 22-week ban if you use staging from an OBGYN. But during debate, we found some language in there that would have made it into a life begins at conception. And so we made some points, we had an attorney make some points about that on the floor of the House, that it killed the debate for that day, and they went back to caucus, came out and withdrew that, had an amendment to take that out, but then they added, or against women's benefit, I guess, they added an ultrasound requirement and a 72-hour waiting period. The 72-hour waiting period is in the courts, so there's been an injunction, and I don't believe anything's been decided on that yet. So the Republicans also ignored Iowans when Iowans said that 77% of Iowans support, and this is from an Iowa poll, one of the most respected polls in the nation, and they said they support funding Planned Parenthood for non-abortion services, so for family planning services. That poll has been done repeatedly, and they've gotten 74, 77, and someplace in the 70s this year. So I think it's fairly consistent, and we know that Iowans support funding for Planned Parenthood for family planning services. That, of course, went to a state program, so we gave $3 million back to the federal government. We funded it in a year that we basically had no money for our priorities, for education, for higher education, for so many things. We said, we don't need it. We gave $3 million back to the federal government on that bill. So this year, what's going on? We did kind of a minor bill, but one that's really a slap in the face to women. It's called the Wrongful Life and Wrongful Birth bill that came out of Judiciary. It's based on a Supreme Court decision, Plowman versus Fort Madison Community Hospital. And it was a woman who, when she went to a radiologist for her 22-week ultrasound, the radiologist discovered some inconsistencies, and he wrote in his report that they needed to be followed up on. That information never got to her, and nothing was ever followed up on. So her child was born with severe disabilities, and last I read, I'm not doing my math, but he was 5 years old. She believes he will never walk, he will never talk. He, of course, is very expensive to care for. She had to quit her job working in a retirement home as an assistant cook, so to care for him full time. And so she is suing the doctors and the hospital for not providing her this information. So she did not have the opportunity to make a decision about her pregnancy. So what this bill does is make it so that a Pamela Plowman in the future would not be able to use the cause of action called wrongful life or wrongful birth in a lawsuit. It would not address a lot of people in the state of Iowa, but for the ones that it does address, it's pretty serious because there aren't very many there just aren't very many ways of finding help in supporting a seriously disabled child. And we know right now we have one of the worst Medicaid systems that we could possibly have, which is the path that most people would take today, but they are denying services and they are denying payments. And so many individuals who are living independently or living in nice facilities. I happen to serve on the board at Friendship Arc in Ames. Many of them are being sent home because the services have been denied and the payments have been denied. So that's one bill that's passed out. It's now in the Senate Judiciary Committee. From what I understand, it was taken out off the agenda for today, so that's a good sign, but who knows what will happen tomorrow. We got from the Senate the 6-week ban. So if a heartbeat is detected, it would ban abortions. No one would be allowed to have an abortion if there is a heartbeat that is detected. Well, very few women know that they're pregnant before a heartbeat would be detected, so this would eliminate nearly every abortion in the state of Iowa. This bill passed in Arkansas and it passed in North Dakota, but there was an immediate judicial injunction in the same circuit that we are in the 8th Circuit. So there is pretty much every reason to believe that we would have an injunction here. I mean, there would be no doubt in my mind. However, on last Thursday, Representative Joel Fry, who's the chair of the Human Resources Committee, came to me and he said there will be, what in his term is, what in his words are, a life bill that will come through Human Resources before the end of this week, and he believes we will do it on Thursday, but it will not be the 6-week ban. He clearly couldn't get the votes in his full caucus to do this, and so they are looking for something else to do. He doesn't know what that will be, but to satisfy all of the parties, there will be something. So I am sitting around waiting to find out what that will be. I don't know if we'll pass the 6-week ban out of subcommittee before we go to committee. I mean, we could learn right before committee what will happen. He hasn't even talked about having a subcommittee on the bill. I need to go back and address that with him. But I know it will not be the bill. That bill will be the mechanism because it's alive, but it will not come out of the House Human Resources Committee as a 6-week ban. It's a mystery. So maybe I should have come next Thursday or next Monday, but and then I could tell you, but I can't. So that's all I have, and I guess I'll turn it over to Jamie.
Thanks, Representative, and thanks, Connie, for having Planned Parenthood here today. I'm Jamie Birch Elliott. I am with Planned Parenthood Voters of Iowa and Planned Parenthood of the Heartland. And so while what we did hear from Representative Wessel Krischel is good news about the 6-week ban, we're still operating as if this is happening because we absolutely cannot let our guard down. And if they come, they've already banned abortions after 20 weeks, which is an arbitrary number. 6 weeks is an arbitrary number. No number of weeks is, going to be helpful here. So I think, we are still prepared for this 6-week abortion ban to proceed. We can't pretend that it's not. We have to be ready to fight it every step of the way. Some points that I want to make about the bill is that, obviously this bans nearly all abortions in Iowa. And what you see here is that when you ban nearly all abortions in Iowa, you put one of our state's pride and joys, the University of Iowa OBGYN residency program, you put that program at risk. And what is so notable about that is that I believe 1/3 of the residents of that program stay in Iowa. And when Iowa already has such a low amount of OBGYNs in our state, we are ranked 50 out of 51 for per capita access to OBGYNs, for access to gynecological care. So when you lose that residency program and when you lose access to providers of just general OBGYN care, that could be a really tough hit to our state that already has a medical system that is in absolute crisis. And then they defunded Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers from the family planning program. So really, where are women going to go to access their family planning? If we already have this huge lack of doctors, women can't go to abortion providers, they can't go to Planned Parenthood. We're just sending this spiral into a tailspin. So, and what we see are the politicians sponsoring this bill are just way outside the mainstream. This is when you hear that 7 in 10 Americans support access to safe and legal abortion, it's very clear that these lawmakers are not in, they are not in the mainstream. And this bill is obviously intentionally unconstitutional. This is obviously wants to be a path to overturn Roe versus Wade. Some lawmakers in this state want Iowa and to be the state that overturns Roe versus Wade. And when you hear lawmakers talk about this, and when you hear lobbyists that support this legislation talk about this, you hear them talking about it in a way that is intentionally unconstitutional. And I don't know how many more lawsuits Iowa people are going to have to pay for this legislature's countless attacks on women. Really, what's the price? How many more millions of dollars are we going to have to pay in lawsuits because anti-woman lawmakers continue to pass laws or continue to harass women? I guess it's up to us to decide, but it's millions of dollars that we're talking about. Really, the legal wrangling there is endless. So, and I think when talking about abortion, when talking about an abortion ban, it can be a little tough, and I know that. It isn't always easy to talk about abortion, and it's easy to get very emotional, but I think something that you can always come back to when talking to lawmakers and when talking to your friends is that no matter what, the government should not be making private healthcare decisions for women or for anybody, for that matter. Abortion bans insert the government into our daily lives. Just insert it right smack in the middle there. Politicians, sorry Beth, but politicians are not experts on women's health care. And I'm not sure why these blanket laws are being applied to personal beliefs. We have seen, like Representative Wessel-Krishel said, that this ban has been passed in other states, North Dakota and Arkansas, and it did not hold up in the courts. And you see over and over again, we hear statements like, well, in 5 years from now, we don't know what the courts are going to look like. Maybe it'll hold up. They're not wrong. So, and I have no doubt that if this finds a way to make it through the House, whether it's this bill or some other form of abortion ban, this bill is going to become law. There's no doubt in my mind when we have Governor Reynolds saying that she will never stop fighting to protect the rights of the unborn. That certainly means that we will see more abortion restrictions, more restrictions on women's reproductive health and access to those services. So, and like I said, Roe v. Wade gave women the right to an abortion, and this is obviously trying to make this go through the courts to overturn that. So, I do want to highlight today some actions that you can take, because I know that's a lot of the reasons why we come here today. I've got 3 actions for you to take. So the first one is shout your outrage. Shout your outrage at your lawmakers, even if they agree with you, or even if, sorry, again, even if they agree with you, or even if you know that they don't agree with you. What I'm saying is send them an email, let them know how you feel. Let them know that you do or do not support this legislation. Always contact your legislators. It's never a lost cause. It's helpful, right? See? Our champions need to hear that they have the support from us. And those that oppose us need to know that this is an unpopular bill. My second piece would be to share your story. So if you have a story, especially a story about pre-Roe versus Wade, that you would like to share with us, an experience maybe that you had or that someone that you know had, share that story with us, because those stories are powerful. We're seeing over and over again in this new era of misinformation and in this era where facts and data don't seem to have an impact, we do see that stories do. So if you have a story to share, even if you think it's that compelling, share it with us. You can go to ppvotersofiowa.org. Front and center on our website, you will see Share Your Story. And you can tell us about why you love Planned Parenthood, your experience with an abortion, with you, a family member, a friend. Let us know, because those stories are helpful. And my final piece would be to show up. I know it's hard. I know sometimes I say, I know it's hard to just pull your pants up every morning, right? To just get dressed and leave the house, and we're tired. I'm tired too, but we cannot stop fighting. There's no way we can let our guard down when these issues keep coming one after the other. We can't let fatigue get in the way. We have to keep showing up. We have to keep fighting back. When Planned Parenthood asks you to show up, do it. When an issue that means a lot to you, when they're asking you to show up, be there, because we can't stop now under any circumstances. So those would be my tips to fighting this bill. Shout your outrage, share your story, and show up. So I think we'll open it up to questions now. Yeah. So if you have questions, oh, wow, okay.
I had a kind of a two-part. The $3 million that we sent back, where is that being funded, and how do we know for sure that that's in a reserve somewhere and being used only for family planning in the state? And as far as providers go, isn't it true that, for example, the Mercy clinic system is not allowed to even prescribe birth control unless they lie about it and say it's for controlling their menstrual periods? Those are a couple of questions.
Okay.
So how on earth can women and girls get any care at all?
I can address the $3 million. So under Medicaid rules, federal Medicaid rules, you are not able to say that the money can only go to non-abortion providing entities. So since that's a federal law, they said, we don't want your Medicaid money. So they gave back the $3 million and said, we want to make our own rules. So they funded it at $3 million in the state, approximately. So using state dollars that, quite frankly, we didn't have, because I can tell you a lot of places that could have gone to, like hearing aids for kids and lots of different places, education. So we don't want your money because we don't like the rules. So they set rules that said, here's the $3 million of state dollars, it's called the state program, and we will fund family planning for but it only goes to a clinic that does not provide abortions or a clinic that is not associated. So if this clinic might provide abortions, but they have another clinic in another town that does not, it can't go to any of those, which is why Planned Parenthood is completely left out. And I do have a sticker on my computer this year that says, I'm not a woman's doctor, but I play one in the legislature.
Very nice.
I recognize I'm not an expert.
We have a question over here.
I have a question about the possibility of an appeal. I think there was legislation that was passed that would require 5 Supreme Court justices to approve a constitutional appeal, and I don't know if that's made it through both houses, or what the effect of that might be on that appeal.
That's a horrible bill, in my opinion, and it has only made it's in the Senate. Did it pass out of the Senate?
I believe it
Yes,
passed out of the
So it
Senate.
passed out of the Senate, but we have not begun to consider it here in the House, to my knowledge, and I serve on judiciary. That's all I know, is that we have not begun to consider it. It may be assigned to a subcommittee, and I just don't know it, but, yeah, it would have impact, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a exact answer to that, and I don't want to speculate, but, and this isn't not just related to women's health, but to issues across the board. It would be detrimental, I would assume.
Barb?
This bill that Fry can't get the votes for, the 6-week ban in the House, if he gets something out and it comes out of committee, and say it, as bad as it would be, it passes the House, doesn't it have to go back to the Senate?
Yes,
Can we run out of time?
let's hope so.
Yeah, I mean, that's best case scenario, right? The more pressure we put on legislators, the longer we can draw this out. I mean, yeah.
Just keep putting pressure. That would be the other reason about you saying, send emails, contact them. and
Right.
Just to
Absolutely.
keep them a little reticent about moving on this issue.
Right. And I would, when she says show up, I would show up at forums, any
Excuse me?
forums. And I know that, and ask questions about this issue. I rarely get a question about this issue at a forum, but I think those are really important places to go. A lot of them are being recorded. Get people on record for what they're actually saying on this. Another way we can slow it up is, depending on what the issue is, if we can paper it with a lot of amendments, that's something that my caucus is usually willing to do, as long as there are amendments that don't hurt anybody. So we'll be looking at that, but we have no idea what it is, and it's going to happen on Thursday. So it will require some work.
So the answer is, the process is, if it passes out of the House with an amendment, it goes back to the Senate and they have to concur. And if they don't, then there's that conversation back and forth before it can be fully passed and go to the governor. So, go ahead.
I have one more comment. I would add one more to your list, and that is, make sure you're registered to vote and register people to vote. We just have to push that whole
And get the
envelope
voter ID.
harder and harder.
Yes, absolutely.
Mary?
I was wondering, Representative, if you know what the reservations are in the Republican caucus. What's that we could capitalize on? Why can't you hear?
I know when we brought it to light that there was language in last year's bill that had life begins at conception, that they imploded. Because when they realized that that language was in there, and it doesn't matter where in the bill it is, it's going into Iowa code, they all, there are some, it's hard for me to call them moderate or reasonable, because they all voted to defund Planned Parenthood, but they decided that was going too far. And
So
they,
that same sentiment, you think, is what's,
right, they rarely identify themselves, which is why I would love to have people showing up at all of their forums to get them on record saying, I would not support a 6-week ban, I would not support life begins at conception, and finding out, because sometimes it's the forums where we find out where these individuals stand.
so at this point, you don't know who those are?
I can speculate, but that's just pure speculation, and I shouldn't do that. Carl?
Should this pass and there be a constitutional fight over this, how does the Attorney General's office then support the bill and before the, who pays for that? What kind of legal process would there be?
Yes.
I can't
Yes.
see
Answer
our-
is yes.
I am not a doctor, nor am I an attorney.
Okay,
So
so
basically
yes.
suing the state.
Right.
And saying it's unconstitutional. So yes, that's the Attorney General's job.
Or the governor could hire an outside
That's- yes,
counsel
yes.
to do it, which is very expensive.
Yeah.
We had to do that on the tobacco bill,
Right.
Right.
and so, that's, the other option is that the
Right.
governor can hire someone outside of the Attorney General's office to do that.
And we already don't have enough money.
Right.
So, yes. Right.
One of the difficulties I have about this too is that I see it as a direct attack again on Planned Parenthood, and that Planned Parenthood puts money into this pot to overturn these bills, and it feels like a specific of, we'll get them, they'll have to spend their money there, and they can't do women's services, and therefore, in their mind, it's all, they can't do abortions because they don't understand we do about 1%, 2% of our services are that.
That's
And
right.
so, from a Planned Parenthood point of view, I don't like it.
Monica.
Just a comment about continued vigilance. Even if this light bill passes through the committee, when it reaches the House floor, we learned last week that they're very capable of throwing an amendment on it that would turn it back into the 6-week or heartbeat bill.
Yes.
So, it's like, if we know that's being debated and you guys show up in conference, that might be very helpful, but we've seen it happen.
Yes.
Can you go into a little bit more detail about the impact of the Beautify breast cancer program with OBGYN, and does that have much, do the Republicans seem to respond to that, or
A little bit, yeah, not a whole lot though. I mean, I can't remember who I heard trying to poo-poo that, but there are some things we don't know because this hasn't been passed and implemented in any state. It's been passed in 2 states, but it's never been implemented. And so when you talk to the people from University of Iowa, they are speculating again on what might happen. But if an OBGYN resident can't practice all methods of birth control and learn everything there is to do about OBGYN, which includes abortions, if they can't practice that, if they can't learn it in the state, then they have to go out of state to learn it. Well, that puts, because the program, that's a part of the accreditation, so that puts the program at risk. And if that program is at risk, the neonatal program is also at risk, which are two, because if you can't have an OBGYN program, you're not going to have a good neonatal program. And so those programs are both at risk. We don't know exactly how much because it's never been done in another state, but we can speculate, they will have to go out of state to practice. How is somebody going to want to go to the University of Iowa if they can't complete their entire program? there. Those are things that we just have to consider, and
You had a question?
What is the status of any exceptions such as for rape or incest, for fetal anomalies, as it say, or for the life and health of the mother?
there is an emergency.
Yes, so
exception.
there are no exceptions for rape, incest, fetal anomaly. The only exception is for in case of a medical emergency, which essentially means that the woman's life would have to be in danger. It would have to actually be in danger. It couldn't potentially be in danger, but she would have to be in the process of dying, essentially, is what triggers those kinds of a medical emergency instances. The medical emergency doesn't mean if her reproductive health system is at risk. It doesn't mean, so if, for instance, if it would put future pregnancies at risk, that is not considered a medical emergency, things along those lines. I think another part of this bill that is very extreme is that it would then make doctors guilty of a Class D felony. And that is very extreme, and that is something that I think is holding back some members of the Republican caucus. At least that's what I've heard. And also, just to that point again, it's just the sheer extremeness, if that's a word. It's not, but just because this bill is so extreme and so outside, what is considered okay, that's why this bill is not popular. But yes, like Representative Kurtz said, we could get some version passed out of committee and then end up with back to a square one in the House floor debate.
Over here.
This is kind of an embarrassing question, because, and I could ask my friend a little more, but I have a feeling that some people in the room may not also know how to find out about forums, subcommittees, committees, and all that other stuff, so that we can show up.
You have them on your website. Progress Iowa, Matt just let us know. Progress Iowa posts them on their website. But you can also find out from your representative. They should be posting those places and sharing that information. Signing up for legislative newsletters will also let you know of that information when those forums are.
We give them to our staff, and they post them, I think, on the Democratic Caucus staff website. And then they start showing up on some other websites like Progress Iowa, and I know there are some unions that AFSCME does it. So okay, so there are quite a few different places that they should show up. Yeah.
What about the committee?
Committee meetings, I think usually you put out a...
Yeah, so as soon as Planned Parenthood knows about a committee meeting related to any of these bills, we share it online, and if there's time, by email. So we'll share it on Facebook and on Twitter. We actually have a Facebook event set up for this bill, so that as soon as we get updates, if you're a member of that Facebook group, you get an alert that will let you know what's happening. And I know that we're in a time where we're just bombarded with alerts, especially on Facebook, but we do have on Planned Parenthood Voters of Iowa, on our Facebook page, you can join an event that will keep you updated on where things are. So it is said, like, say no to the 6-week ban, I believe. It should be front and center. I don't think you'll be able to miss it. Also, you should be just bombarded with ads about it. So
We're over here.
I just want to make a comment about the question relating to what are Republicans saying about the University of Iowa issue. And I can tell you that I've heard Amy Sinclair say that is widely overblown. Okay. And the other thing I would say is sign up for newsletters, legislators' newsletters. And don't just sign up for yours. Sign up for those people that you want to be watching, to see what they're saying and to see where their forums are. I go to
I go to Amy Sinclair's forums. She's not she represents part of my county, but not and Greg Parcels. I keep track of what they're doing.
And I think that's interesting that they say if the regions could stay out of a reproductive choice controversy, they will stay out of it. But they recognize, I mean, they do not jump onto these. But when they saw that this was making progress through the House, and then I went and spoke to one of their representatives, and she said, well, we don't know what's going to happen, but here's what we do know. And so to say it's overblown, they haven't overblown it. She was very, very cautious in what she said to me, but also let us know that it, yes, will have some sort of impact since it's never been passed or implemented in another state. We don't know exactly what that will be, but we do know there will be some sort of impact on our state. So that is not fair for her to say.
So other than University of Iowa, have you had responses from other physician groups? Because this is basically telling physicians how to practice.
Correct. And I know that there's a physician from Ames that testified at the first subcommittee, sorry. And she's been very active. I don't know, I haven't looked at the forum, but last year we had a lot of obstetricians and gynecologists come for a day, and they said, please let us know. I guess I have not activated them, and I don't know if you have, but they've been very concerned.
ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, ACOG, yes. They are lobbying. I mean, they have sent a letter to, I believe in the Senate, they sent a letter to members of the Judiciary Committee where this bill was. There was one senator who called the author of the letter a liberal extremist. So that was just, when doctors seem to speak out against this issue, they're discounted. But, you know, we do know that abortions are part of a full spectrum of gynecological care for women, and abortions are considered and are truly an important and necessary piece of OBGYN care for women. And so, you know, that's why they are part of a residency program at the University of Iowa. Because you have to have the option to learn about them, how to perform them. And so, you know, doctors groups, no, not really, have not gotten involved in full force. I do know that, you know, some Ames physicians and some independent physicians, I know that their lobbying groups have spoken out against the bill, but those would be the only ones.
The Iowa Medical Society? Nothing.
No.
Just put this whole thing in.
I do want to say, I mean, they were against the bill due to the OBGYN program being in danger at the University of Iowa. That was the main reason of their...
Not that doctors could go to jail.
Correct.
They might be close to that too.
But in their public
Let's put this whole subject into perspective. Do we know how many abortions are performed in America? Do we know how many abortions are performed in Iowa? Are there any programs that, you know, maybe not get rid of abortions entirely, but reduce the number of abortions?
Access to family planning reduces the number of abortion. Access to family planning, access to comprehensive sex education reduces the number of abortion. We know that for a fact. But those things are being drastically reduced in our state. So
Abortions were going down.
Yes.
When we
Do
had,
we have a number?
we did back then, that they were being reduced by like 30%.
Yeah.
When there was good sex education and then when there was good family planning, but we have lost, I mean, there was an article in the Des Moines Register saying we are a family planning desert.
Yeah.
So,
There are numbers in Texas. So Texas several years ago took some extreme measures. There are numbers in Texas now that show increased unwanted pregnancies, especially among teens.
Okay.
So if you go look.
and a lot of maternal fatalities in Texas are
Well, we
showing
even
up.
had numbers in Iowa in the last 3 or 4 years. Sally Peterson was part of a task force that worked on that, and we saw numbers each year going down until what is currently happening.
Teen pregnancy.
Teen pregnancies,
too.
and yes, yes. Yeah.
I knew the answer to that question already.
I had a feeling you did.
How we knew
You
that.
want to shed some light on it.
Yeah.
That's good.
Go ahead.
But you have to remember that logic doesn't mean anything.
Right.
You know, just like last year, they threw $3 million out the window because, they were plowing ahead with.
Ideology.
Just to deny Planned Parenthood.
It'll be the same way with
Maybe
this.
if we brought in a veterinarian, they'd believe a veterinarian.
They have one in their caucus here.
And I do want to, so, I did bring a fact sheet, so, if you can educate yourself on the 6-week abortion ban, those are available at the end of the table. I also brought a list of members of the Human Resources Committee in the House, sorry. So that you can reach out to them, that way you don't need to look them up, you can have them, you're here today, maybe send them a note or, get your phone, send them a quick email right after we wrap up today, so.
Did you say that? I thought you said, Representative, it was going to be in the judiciary in the House. Is it going to be in judiciary?
It came out of Judiciary in the Senate, it will be in Human Resources in the House. Okay, so,
Super majorities in judiciary, I think is, the super majority bill was in judiciary. Okay,
Yes.
Any last, Pat?
And I'm operating on different advice, but if you send emails, don't send them collectively, send them individually, and if you can personalize them in any way, do that. Just saying
Yes.
so that it doesn't just show up that 27 people got the same thing. Takes a little longer, but do it,
More effective.
and call these people representatives, not senators, who like that.
and if you have a story, right.
To send them a second one. I'm sorry, of course I appreciate your service in the House and your representative, and then please help me, please support or, vote yes, whatever it was that I was on that particular time.
And if you do have a story to share, that's great. Something that can be shared publicly is great. My mom just sent out one, she's 90, she was in nursing school 70 years ago, and she talks about women coming in and dying because of botched abortions, and that's a part of her history and a part of her life. So you have something to share like that, we would love to hear those stories.
Well, thank you very much. Help me thank Beth and Jamie. I'm very glad you're here, and all the legislators that are in the room, thank you so much also for being there. Make sure that you sign in if you did not, and the information that Jamie talked about is at the end of the table. Thank you.